Hello, I'm Emily Edwards, an intern with Climate Film, and what you just watched was Finding Groovopolis, a film filled with curiosity and a sense of finding the truth. A feature film in our Northern category, and with us today is the film director, Wil Kristin. Will, it's nice to finally meet you.
Likewise, it's great to meet you, and thanks for sharing the film.
So, my first question I always like to start off with was, what was your thought process with something like this kind of film?
Yes, that's a good question, and I would say it changed over time. In the beginning, when I decided I wanted to do something with my dad's script that I found, I was just kind of grieving my dad. So for anyone that's lost someone close to them, you just kind of like look for what's left behind, and then sort of as time went on, I guess it became much more about, well, how do I lower the barrier to understanding all of this, and how do I actually make a compelling story, and how do I sort of reduce the number of themes, and kind of really focus on my dad's struggle with kind of figuring out who he was and figuring out what his work looked like for him, and so yeah, it changed, but ultimately, I'm really happy with the film we wound up with.
So, what made you decide to start making films in the first place?
Yeah, I I'm kind of a little bit of a generalist when it comes to communicating. Like,
Mhm.
I work in the nonprofit world. I do websites, help people do presentations, but I what I find is like there's so much information, and if you don't have emotion that people
Mhm.
can connect with, that information often doesn't get held or like digested. Like people don't really feel it. So I kind of just immediately gravitated toward working on film when I got the chance because
Mhm.
it was just kind of my favorite medium. So when it seemed like there was something where emotion was possible, where you sort of could carve out the time and resources to edit something and craft it, I just kind of fell in love. Maybe first by just appreciating films, but then the process and the craft of being able to make it.
Mhm.
I was kind of hooked and loved the ability to just help people with whatever stories they're making, especially when it can culminate in a film.
What made you decide a documentary film out of any other category?
Yeah, that's a good question specifically for this film because, I had found my dad's script, which was a narrative
Mhm.
feature film. And the co writer, who's still alive, he lives in LA, he kind of assumed I was going to make it, like make this film that they wrote. And other
Uh-huh.
people kind of assumed I did a Kickstarter and they thought maybe I would make the film. And for me, like that wasn't really my story. That was my dad's story that he wrote. For
Mhm.
me, story was trying to understand my dad through this script that he left behind. So it was always going to be a documentary, uh, you know, that kind of wove in these scenes from the fiction, the narrative film.
Mhm.
Um, that was just, it was kind of what I knew, what I had access to, and frankly, it's like what I like. Like I spend my free time watching a lot of documentaries. I like that. I like the narrative films too, and I like the ones that kind of mix and match as well.
What made you want to do a film about something your dad wanted to make as a film or into a film?
I would say that my dad and I had similar interests, especially music. But
Mhm.
I was only 26 when he passed away, and like we really didn't get a chance to collaborate, or talk about things that really like mattered in a really deep way. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, when I found this script and I thought, well, hey, filmmaking is something I really care about. I would love the opportunity. I actually thought I was going to make a short, And then it just was like, it's just kind of like the story told me that it warranted something longer. It just
Mhm.
there was enough complexity there. So um, because something of my dad's that I found happened to be something I was interested in doing. It was a
Mhm.
script. I'm interested in filmmaking. I thought, let me try it. And it was sort of like right as I was getting older, and I had enough time, at least in the beginning of the process. So I thought, let me put more. I didn't know how much energy it was going to require, but like I was like, I could put as much energy as I have right now into this, and like, you know, sure enough, like this many years later, we have a feature film.
How long did it take to make Finding Groovopolis? I'm curious because there's a lot of back and forth between timelines.
Yeah, it's taken a while. Some of the years, were less busy than others, but I kind of mentioned grieving, right? So like grieving is like a lifelong process. And I sometimes think that like grieving the loss of my dad was the real project, and then this film is the side project.
Mhm.
And it's impossible to kind of set a timeline on grief, but I launched a Kickstarter in 2015 after
Mhm.
attending Oregon documentary camp. And this was like my alternative to going to film school. I was like, I'm going to meet the best filmmakers in Oregon. We're going to learn how to do this together. And so, when all is said and done, when I like do some festivals, kind of get it out there, it's gonna be, just shy of like 10 years
Mhm.
total, you know, that it took from like the idea of I want to do something with the script to it's available, anyone can watch it. I did not think it would take that long, but that's how long it's taken.
Wow. I think that's the longest I've seen a film in the Climate Film Festival, I will say. Some people start in like September and finish like by the next year for our film festival. That's amazing.
Well, and one thing I'll say, because there were a lot of people I talked to, I always wanted it to be done sooner. And then especially talking to documentary filmmakers, they would say,
Mhm.
you'll know when the time is right to release it. And they also say you grow up with your documentary. So I've seen films that have taken longer. And obviously there are amazing documentary filmmakers that can take less time. Pre-production can help a ton. You know, sometimes documentary stories can really do that. Other times, like in my case, we sort of had to live. I had to live with my family and my characters long enough to make the film. The narrative parts of the film actually have been done for many years. They were done probably by 2017, but the rest of it, and the pandemic kind of slowed things down. But the rest of it, it really kind of took that long.
Wow. Um, how so you mentioned you were in a documentary camp. What was that like? 'Cause I've never heard of like a camp that's specific towards like narrative or documentary.
Yeah. So I joined this experience, Oregon documentary camp.
Mm.
At the time, it was run by Northwest Documentary, and they're still a great organization that partners on it.
Mhm.
It's now kind of under the domain of Oregon Media Lab. But basically, these are a group of filmmakers from throughout Oregon to some extent, but people come from other places, and we would convene and have talks, share our ideas. And for me, like sharing a little bit of work in progress was the best part, because
Mm.
that's when early on everyone was excited about my film idea, but they kind of broke the news to me that, hey, this story is really about you and your journey. And so early on, I had to get like really comfortable, sometimes turning the camera around or just writing voiceover. And Oregon Documentary Camp was a really big part of that, and a lot more affordable than going to film school. Um, and there are camps and labs in various forms that exist today.
Mhm.
Um, Personally, what I found is that if you're kind of like far along in your film journey, some of these labs can be very exclusive and almost like gatekeeping. Like you have to, you sort of have to know somebody to get in. But Oregon Documentary Camp is the opposite. Oregon Documentary Camp was like, you just want to be serious, or you're serious, you care about documentary, and you have a strong idea. Um, like by all means, like let's get connected and help you make your film a reality.
Mhm. Do you think the documentary camp helped you like find your way through your film?
I would say so, definitely. Like the camp itself helped kind of kickstart parts of the film. I
Mhm.
actually launched my Kickstarter the day after my first day attending Oregon Documentary Camp. So way back in May of 2015, I was at like in Silverton, Oregon, I launched it right then.
Mhm.
And of course, I got backers from Documentary Camp, but more so, it's like the people I met. I made lifelong friends there, but I also met people that were just going through the same process I was,
Mhm.
you know, having to fundraise, having to build a team, and eventually applying to festivals and this side of it. Um, so it definitely helped a lot.
So I saw in like the credits that you are a producer and the director of your film. Was How was that for like an experience? You have doing both roles.
Not ideal. I mean, look, like I get to have full creative control over my film. Um, and I know what's going on with every aspect of my film. Some
Mhm.
big films that maybe they have producers that do some of this stuff out separately. I think the flip side of that is that for my film, when you just look at like the amount of time spent directing the film, being creative, making decisions related to the craft of the film versus doing all the things necessary just to make sure that once the film actually gets all the way done, and then once it's done, it gets access to eyeballs on
Mhm.
it. You know, uh, it's a huge amount of time spent producing, and so it has its perks, but I would recommend, and this kind of goes back to my point on pre-production, if you can build that team, if you can find champions to believe in your film and stay with you the whole way, I would really recommend considering trying to bring on producers that are not just you. But this was a very personal film. I have great, you know, champions of the film, but it just kind of worked out that I'm absolutely the producer and the director for this one.
Mhm. So there's location changes in your film. You're popping all over the place. How long did it take to film in those locations?
Yeah, it varied how long we spent in each location. And for
Mhm.
the I'm guessing it's funny too because you mentioned that, but you're probably mostly thinking of like the documentary location changes because that's kind of obvious.
Mhm.
We're in Missouri, we're in Boston. I'm at home in Portland, although you might not necessarily know that. Um, we're in New York. Because of the way I weave together modern footage that I shot with home video footage in all those places, it's kind of impossible to tell you how long it took. And then in Groovopolis, like in the narrative scenes, we shot the dance stuff in New Orleans. We shot the underwater stuff in Hawaii. And to be honest with you, I was just weaving these shoots into my life. So if I was somehow able to go on a trip and kind of afford tacking this kind of part of it on, I would do it. Generally, we spent very small amounts of time
Mhm.
in these various locations, but if it's just kind of seeing my family,
Mhm.
um, that would just be kind of like spread out over a number of years. So, you know, spread out over a lot of years, but the time spent on the shooting was relatively low. When you add it up across all the locations, it's quite a lot of time.
So the voiceover. Whenever I hear people talk about voiceovers, they have to take a lot of takes on these voiceovers. How many takes did it take you to do that voiceover, do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say so the easiest way to answer that is like three sessions at the sound booth, like
Mhm,
where we did it at this place Open Signal in Portland. Used to be the Portland Community Center, and it took like 3 overall sessions, but that's less because of the quality. The quality was pretty good each time. I think I had a cold one time, and I did my best. Or actually, like, I lost my voice, and then I had a cold. But I knew, like, with my life, it's like, you gotta do the best you can with the times you have. Like, I didn't have an limitless opportunities to record.
mhm,
Um, but what would happen is, like, I would record the voiceover, and then I would show it to some more people, or I'd do a test screening, and I'd be lucky enough that I'd collect all the feedback, and I'd say, you know what, these changes are worth it. We're going to do one more round. And so we finally did like a final pass on voiceover. And now
mhm,
we're at the point where we're saying like, it's good. Like we made the best film we can. And so, yeah, but I did a lot of scratch voiceover. So, recording on my phone, giving it to my editor. Sorry, I had a cold. We'll fix that when we really do it. And usually my energy would be like pretty low on the
mhm.
scratch voiceover. I'd be like in the shower trying not to like wake up anyone. So then when we went and did the real voiceover, it's kind of like a lot more hopefully consistent throughout the film.
Mhm. Um, so is there anything else you would like to add about finding Groovopolis?
I would say that I just wanted to share gratitude for, you know, the filmmakers that I found kind of throughout Oregon and the Pacific Northwest
Mhm,
specifically, but also just kind of like by going to other festivals. I think without the community of champions that I found, this project would have really just felt impossible.
mhm,
It wouldn't have It would have been maybe like a nice YouTube memorial video or something, but it wouldn't have necessarily been a film. And every time I kind of shared it, talked about my vision for it, I got more and more encouragement and more champions who said, like, that's something we really want to see. And then I also just, have to say, like, watching movies kind of in this genre, personal documentaries that explore tough topics, um, that's just been hugely helpful for me too. Like, I eat that stuff up whenever I can go find them. It's funny, like, other people maybe that's not what they watch on their free time, but for me, it's like it's been really inspiring and kind of made me think like, hey, if they can make films on all these topics and find their audience, I can do that too. So yeah, just wanted to share kind of gratitude for the filmmakers and the films that made me feel like this was possible.
hey, thank you so much, Will, for being part of the Klamath Independent Film Festival.
Thank you, Emily.